Hello, and I don't know if anybody else out there is gonna sort of see me, but you know what? Shit happens, and things are just crazy, 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 crazy. Um, my internet is buggering around. My sound system has been buggering around. I've had to restart this, so I really am sorry about all of the changes. I'm gonna try and get in there and I'm going to try and see what's happening at the moment and get into share this new live with everybody. So just bear with me. I'm trying to do some stuff here, and I am really, really apologetic. But you know what? I'm going to go and just put this out everywhere and see what happens. So, guys, we are here because I'm doing officially the first episode of my storyline. Now, last week I did the intro, which basically was the prologue to everything. And what it is just me telling my story. And I really want you to hear my heart with all of this because whew, I'm being as vulnerable as possible in showing you who I am. Let me just quickly do this so that I'm not actually boring the shit out of you with me trying to do two things at one time. All right, so let's go and post. All right, done, dusted, and let's just move back and keep this up here so that I can actually see what's happening with peeps. And there we go. So what is my life all about? Well, it seriously is fun. My life has been a shit show from hell, and at the same time it's been probably the funniest thing on planet Earth in many, many ways. And I'm sure all of us can identify with that kind of thing as well, because we all have our own drama, our own thing that happens, and then what we go through different sort of scenarios in life, and we find the joy, we find the happiness, we find the clarity. But before that clarity comes, we traverse this path, we traverse this. Can you hear them? The dogs are going absolutely ballistic. Anyway, somebody else can sort that out. So I've entitled this episode as The Radio Goes Quiet. It's like my whole life I've been able to tune into, up until I was about 11, I could tune into the energies. I knew when things were happening. I had this high rate of intuition that my folks just thought was a really good sense of humor and a good sense of imagination, as I explained in the last podcast, where I told you how I would have these guests, these friends that would come and play with me in the sandpit. Now, that was obviously when I was a kid, 3-4 years old. And that actually went on right the way through to when I was sort of 10, 11 years old. And I mean, I would be invited to friends' parties. People would come to my birthday parties, and they'd say, "Hey, guess what's in the present?" And whatnot. And I would be able to put my hands around it, and I'd be able to sort of pretty accurately guess what was inside there, until it became a case where people no longer wanted me to do that because it took the fun out of what was actually inside. They couldn't actually enjoy the surprise anymore because I'd already let the cat out the bag. But in my life, where am I? I'm about 11 years old now. Well, I'm 10. It's 1979, and my beautiful father is on his way to work. And for me, it was a public holiday school, or not public holiday, but it was a school day where we didn't have to go to school. And what happened was my dad tootled off to work. And unfortunately, he got hit by a bus and he was killed. And that shook my life. Obviously, I mean, my dad was my idol. He was everything that stood as a stable and dependable foundation, especially as my real father, my paternal father, was an absolute arsehole. And I don't mind saying that out publicly either. He was a drunken bastard. And yeah, I have no knowledge of him whatsoever. And I really don't mind. Anyway, so my dad dies, okay? And forgive me if I sound flippant and all the rest of it, but I have worked through so much trauma and so much grief with this that honestly, when I talk about my father dying, I miss him, sure. But I was 11. I'm 58 now. So there's all of this time that's gone through my life, and it is what it is. That event happened, has molded me unbeknownstly to who I am today. So that's when everything started to go, in some ways, awry. Emotionally, I was devastated. Emotionally, I was completely off the wall. Mentally, I shut down, and everything just started to crumble in on me. Those visits, those traveling out to the night sky, the going to places, traveling to spaceships, etc., stopped. Like poof, there was nothing left. Why? I firmly believe it's because I shut down. I didn't know how to function without this stability that had been ripped from my life. It was gone. So the visits stopped. My friend Sandy no longer came to visit me. And I started to hear this in my ears. It was completely the static, all right? And that's cool. That's cool. It was gone. Static was happening, and everybody said, oh, you've got tinnitus, and I was taken here, there, and all the rest of it, get my ears checked, get all the other stuff done. Nobody could find anything wrong with me, but I had this static. Now, even though all of that sort of disappeared from my life, I was searching for something. And as I sort of said, that I had these experiences where I sensed there was something in the clouds looking at me. I felt energy around me. I was hungry for something that I couldn't see. I never left the desire to know more. The fact that I couldn't no longer sort of astral project, or I didn't have these visitations from the unseen friends, it left a hunger in me. It created this, I've got to know more. I have to know why they don't come anymore. I have to know what the fuck's going on, except for I didn't put it like that when I was 11, 12 years old. But I was hungry. Now, my mum was insistent that we went to church as we were kids. She was a churchgoer. My dad was a churchgoer. And so I went to church. And it was in the church that I actually first started to question a lot about religion, a lot about all the different things that we're taught. And my introduction to questioning what was in the Bible, questioning what was happening around us, was when I was about 14 years old. Yeah, I was about 14. And it was an evening service at the Methodist Church in Harare in Zimbabwe. That's where I went to church there. And I remember it very, very clearly, because I got to the point where I listened to this preacher, and I was listening to him, and he was a youngish man. He played a guitar, and he made me laugh. He made me laugh on a little section, because obviously night services are a little bit smaller than the day services. And there's this question that goes out, and it's like somebody in the audience goes, "Pastor, can you tell me, do you believe in the devil?" Oh, I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun, you know. But a part of me was also, yeah, of course, you know, there's the devil, and then there's God, and then there's Jesus in the middle, right? I mean, that's the concept I had, because that's what I had been taught. And I watched this guy, and he sits there, and his Adam's apple, he swallows, once, twice. He's just so, and I can see in his face, as a 14-year-old, I see in his face, and I'm like going, hang on, there's something up here. He doesn't want to answer this question. And then he said to the man, he said, okay, I can answer this question. I can answer it using the Bible to give validation as to my answer, or I can just give you a yes, no answer, and you're not going to like it. And so the man at the back was like, well, I think I already know what your answer is going to be. Just give the answer. And I can remember thinking, why is the man so angry? Oh, he sounded really upset. And the preacher guy just said, look, I don't believe in the devil, not the way it's being taught. And I'd like to show you through the scriptures why that is. Well, he wasn't allowed to finish. He wasn't allowed to speak. And what happened was virtually everybody almost instantaneously stood up and walked out the room. And I'm like sitting there going, but I want to ask this man some questions. And my mom's tugging at my arm saying, come on, we have to leave. And I'm like, no, but why? Well, I mean, for the first time, I actually like this minister. I think he's fun. I think he's got some interesting things to say to us as the youth, because he used to do the youth section as well. And he's honest. He's a preacher that doesn't actually hide behind I don't know, dogma. He actually wants to talk about it, and I wanted to stay. I wanted to listen, but you could please imagine this. Okay, there I am, 14 years old. It's like, come on, Mom, I want to stay. I want to talk to this man. He doesn't believe in the devil, and you all tell me that the devil exists, and he's saying that the devil doesn't exist, and I'm like, I've got a million questions popping out of my head as this 14-year-old. And my mom looks at this and she knows if I start getting into this question, she's going to have nothing but trouble at home, because I'm going to say, but the devil doesn't exist, but the devil doesn't exist, but the devil. You can't make me do this. You can't make me do that. Anyway, he says, no, I don't believe in the devil. Congregation walks out. My life just goes. It was like, oh, fuck. I really, I thought we were going to get somewhere. Anyway, soon after that, I mean, because literally the next Sunday I go there and I think, well, I couldn't talk to him then, so I'll talk to him this Sunday. And he's not there. There's a new preacher. There's somebody else in the pulpit. And I go, well, where's Pastor so-and-so? Or where's minister? And basically I'm told he was fired. And I'm like, okay. So that was my first lesson. It's like, if you don't speak and say what the church says you got to say and speak, you get fired. You get cancelled, as we call it about in today's world. And that for me was my first active planting of the seed to question everything I was told, whether it was religious or anything else. And that was also the sort of time my mom decided she was going to move us from a traditional church to a charismatic church. And so, what do you want to say? Hello. So we move across there to what was Rhema Church, there, RHEMA, Rhema Church. And again, it kind of appealed to me as a young teenager, because they had a youth department that was full of music. They had drums and guitars. They played lively music that you could sort of bop to and all the rest of it. And so I kind of liked it. Okay. And I thought, oh, well, I'll hang out and sort of see what comes. And the kids there for a while were pretty cool as well. Sweetie, what do you want? Boop, boop. What do they say? Never make movies with dogs and children. What's your matter? And at first, as I say, I'm there in the youth group and everything seems to be fine. It's going well. And then all of a sudden I noticed that people are kind of being what's the word? I struggle with words sometimes. They've been sort of like, they're making fun of the way that I dress, because I'm not wearing the latest fashion. I've got old jeans on, i.e. 2-3-year-old jeans. My stuff's not new. It's hand-me-downs and it's secondhand at times. And the reason is because my mom's a single mother, and obviously my dad died. There's no the income that we once had is no longer there. And do you want the stick? Do you want the stick? But it's mine. Thank you. And so so there's this stigma's coming on now. It's like, I've got hand-me-downs. I'm I can't afford to always go to the after what we call the after party of the youth group, where everybody would go for coffee and chips or something like that at the Wimpy, and which is something like your Red Rooster or your Wendy's or something like that. And I remember sort of saying to somebody, I said, hang on, guys, you guys seem to be talking about me. You're pointing out my trousers, you're pointing out my clothes, something like that. What's going on? And this one guy turned around and said, you've worn that every single week. Don't you have any other clothes? Pointing to my denims. And I said, no, I've got one pair of denims and I've got other, and whatnot. And they said, well, can't your mother afford to buy you any more trousers? And I'm like, well, actually, no, she can't. And I got really, really embarrassed about the way that I was. And so the cliche, again, in the church, that sort of thing about, and the thing is, I never had that when I was at the college that I went to, which was a co-ed sort of place where I was doing my sort of like sort of education to my O levels. I could wear the same clothes every single day, and the college kids there wouldn't really give a toss as long as I kind of like was in what do you call it? You're just chatting and hanging out with them. But the church guys, there seemed to be this prestige and what they wore. There was like a level, a hierarchy, and it was just the cliche sort of came, love your neighbor. But you know what? To love your neighbor, you got to be dressed a certain way. You got to wear certain clothes. You got to do a certain thing, behave a certain way, and then you can be loved. But if you just average Joe and, your mother's on there trying to do whatever she needs to do to ensure that there's food on the table, well, that's just not good enough. You're not there. So that's the kind of church that I started with. Okay. And I hung out because basically I had this thing in my life, okay, where I wanted to people please. I wanted to, I didn't want to be rejected. I wanted friends so desperately that I would sometimes just try to fit in. And I'm sure we've all done that at some time. We've all had this thing where it's like, if I do this, I'll be accepted. If I do this, I'll be accepted. If I do this, I'll be accepted. And that was my life for a long time, especially in the church. Behave myself, do this, fit the pattern they want, make sure that I listen to the preachers and all the rest of it, and be what they want. But where it became really weirded out for me, I'm being serious, is as the years went on, I learned to balance myself. I learned to be who I was, what I was, and enjoy myself within the parameters of being in the church. And eventually, as I matured, I became went from sort of like youth into sort of teenage and all the rest of it. And when I say teenage, I'm talking about like 18, 19 sort of thing. And I remember when I was about 18, I went overseas to the UK for 2 years. So that would have been about sort of 88, 89, end of 87, 88, and then sort of 89. So it was about 2 years I was in the UK. And that, fuck me, that was an eye-opener. And that was just something that was just, I loved it. I loved UK. Didn't want to come back to Zimbabwe at all. Didn't want to know. And in those 2 years, I didn't go to church. I hung out with my sister and her gang, her husband and other people that used to like just that sort of click there. That was just really introduced me to a life that I'd never experienced before. And I loved UK. And it was the first time I got hit on by a girl. That was the universe saying, sweetheart, wake up, you know what you are, just here's something. And it was just like, but I didn't know what to do. I was so shy. It was just like I froze at that particular time. And my sister came over because she worked at this pub, and she said to me, so what happened? And I'm like, what do you mean what happened? She says, I saw the girl hitting on you. She actually came to me and wanted me to send a drink over to you. And I said, well, you better go and talk to her first and all the rest of it, see if she wants the drink. And I'm like, I was so fucking naive. I was about 19 then. Anyway, so after about 2 years, I had to go back to Zimbabwe, and I didn't want to. And I still had this tomboy. As you can see, I've got the tomboy attire. I'm happy in my trousers and my shorts and my t-shirts. I'm happy, short hair. I'm happy. I like the way I look. And I went back there and I got involved in the church game because that's kind of what I knew. All right. There was a thing that went on in the church that I was in at Rhema. They decided that they needed to clean the church. And what better way to clean the church than do what Jesus did and cast the demons out, right? So everybody in the church basically got their energy read by the pastors and the cell group leaders, etc., and they were called in to have sessions with the particular department heads. And my department head was the children's church leader, and I'm not going to name names, guys. I'm just going to be talking about stuff, and so what it is there they are. They're sort of like there, and they call me in and they say that, they said they really want to talk to me because they're a bit concerned that I'm very masculine. I've got a masculine energy that is possessing me, making me be very masculine, very boyish. And they think it's I need to get it cast out of me. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now, I don't know if any about you guys, but sometimes have you ever been in a situation where somebody says something and they like tuning into you, and you're going, I think you missed the mark. Seriously, I think you've missed the mark. But they're not listening to you because they've got an agenda. They've got this is what it is. And so they start to cast the demon out. And I'm sitting there in my chair and I'm like going, who the fuck are they talking to? And seriously, that was in my head. And it's like, in the name of Jesus, we cast you out. And I'm like going, what are you casting out? You demon of masculinity in this feminine body, we cast you out, we pull you out. And again, on and on. And I realized the guy that was doing it was getting redder and redder and redder in the face. And I thought he was going to have an epileptic fit. He was like, veins sticking out here and all the rest of it. So I went, I better put on a show. I better do something about it, And I thought, okay, hang on, what do I know? What do I know about? So the brain's going like this, and I'm like, okay, hang on, wait a minute. In the Bible, it says that this happened, that they did this, and people have talked about this, and they have this experience and that experience. Okay, so grab my hand, okay? All of a sudden, my hand becomes all on its own. It starts to have its own life. Woo, and it goes, and it grabs me on the throat, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm being choked. Oh no, and my eyes are popping out, and I'm like squeezing, and my face is going red. And this guy grabs my hand, okay? And he's like pulling like this. Now, I'm pretty strong. In fact, I'd say I'm bloody strong at times if I put my energy, my mind to it. And so I've got a good grip around my throat, but I've got it in a position. See, I did do, when I was younger, I did a bit of martial arts and all the rest of it. And I know how to put your hand so that if I do that, then I'm really going to choke. But if I do that around me, so like that, okay, if I breathe, I can still get some breath. Yes, it is sort of like tightening the blood around there, but I know how to put the pressure so I can squeeze there, but I'm still getting air in my tube. I'm not doing that, you see. And so I'm doing this, so like this, and you can see my face is getting red, and if I pop my eyes out like this, it's like, oh my God, what's happening? And he's pulling like this, but I'm actually just using my body weight to pull back and lean against the wall. So, I'm anchoring myself in. And so there's all of this happening. And he's in the name of Jesus. And so then what I did is I launched myself. Okay, I went, okay, so I got to do something here, otherwise he's gonna, I actually was like, I was performing. I was like putting on a performance, and I launched myself across the room like I was going to jump out the window, only to have myself thrown back into the chair. And it's like everything's sort of set up. You can see where the chair is, you can see and the avenue of space and all the rest of it. And then eventually it was a case of like, okay, I'm tired now. I'm bored, basically. So I just went and I clapped my body. And I was like, and then I thought, hang on, masculine. They were casting the masculine out. So what's the opposite of that? Okay, feminine. So I crossed my legs and I sat with my hands in my lap, and I had this real gentle look. And they were like, oh, it's so beautiful. Look at this beautiful woman in front of us. And they were like, da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. Seriously, that again, I thought about that. I think I should have got an Oscar for that little show. But again, this is what I want to get at, is there's another question that came to me throughout this. Is like the first question from the church when I was in the Methodist church. It was like, why aren't they listening to this preacher who says, no, there's not a devil? They won't give him the chance to speak. And I'm like, okay, so why? Why do we have to fit into a type of costume, a box? We have to fit that way, right? Now I'm in another church and I can't be who I am. I've got to fit a box of what they say females should be like, okay? But here's the question. If they were so spirit-led and so spirit-filled and so intuitively driven, why didn't they pick up that I was pissing around? Why didn't they pick up that what I was doing was just a, just a show? So, it's like, why couldn't they see I was messing around with them? It's like, so for me, what it is like, this is my, from 11 to probably about, I would say that happened when I was about mid-20s, okay? So that, in that time, I was in the church. And in that time, I was molded. I was twisted. I was compressed. Everything about me was being fine-tuned to perform in a certain way. I mean, I was going to be a preacher, guys. I was going to qualify as a preacher, and I was going to go preach the gospel. I have my associate degree in theology. Am I proud of it? Yeah, I'm proud of that, because I did something in my life where I actually got a piece of paper that said I actually studied and did something, because I hated studying. But what I'm more proud of is the fact that I can look back on all of this, where I went through this 20 odd years, okay, from 11 to 20, I went through that period, and I learned something. And some of it's not good. I learned that if I behave a certain way, I can get people to think that that's what I am. And that's, in some ways, that's a good defense mechanism. But in so many other ways, that's scary. That's scary that you can actually, that I can actually do that. And so I've had to unlearn that. I've had to unlearn that. And believe me, it's hard, because that's like a whole personality. I've also learned that for those of us who have been in the church, all right, there's been this dogma that we've connected into, and that becomes an identity. And when I know for myself, when I left the church, the identity of the Christian girl, the identity of doing certain things in a certain way, the identity of having to pray and look to Jesus and behaving in a certain way, otherwise I would go to hell. Do you know that I had that thought pattern and everything going into my spiritual journey, right up until probably 2019 still, okay? It was so deeply, the dogma was so deeply embedded in my mind and in my energy, that I have been working to clear it for a long, long time. But this is how strong religious dogma can be. And I don't care if it's, if you're a charismatic Christian or a Catholic or a Buddhist or whatever, if the dogma of that religion embeds in you to where you cannot see yourself being anything else, you cannot, if you rip that away from you, that identity of that persona, then, and you're left with who am I? And that scares you. That's a good thing. But if you go there and you say, no, I can't be this, I have to have my identity, I think we have to look at that really, really strongly. And obviously I'm gonna go on. I don't want to major on different things now, because I could just for an hour or two, you know me. And if you don't know me, believe me, I can start talking for a long time. But what I'm trying to say here is show you that there's parts of my life where I allowed myself to become molded, allowed myself through trauma and through abuse and through things that were happening in my life that sometimes I had no control over. Like, very, very briefly, from the age of 6, until the age of 14, I did not have control over being abused. I was in fear. I was molded. I was manipulated. I was put in a place where mentally what would happen is that the grooming that had taken place, that certain words would be used, certain actions, and my whole mind, my whole persona would just go click, 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 and I would become this passive puppy in this guy's hands, okay? Thankfully, that stopped. My mother got clued up on something. She didn't quite know what was going on, and things happened. All right. It was only when I was 21, and I actually said to her, "Look, this is what was going on," that she went freak. This is, she freaked out a little bit about it, but that's okay. That's okay, because again, healing comes when you expose. Healing comes when you open up the pus bucket and you start letting the air in, and you start letting the sun in, and you start excavating the trauma. What I'm trying to say, guys, is our lives are what we make of it, what we allow ourselves to be. All right. So when we come into this scenario, when we come into this place of being, and we start realizing different things, like when I look back and I look at the points that I do for these episodes, I go, my God, and the laughter and the fun and all the rest of it. And I did have fun. And there was a lot of humor. And when I look back, I think, fuck. But at the same time, if I was to just stay and, I'm there's this demon of tomboyishness inside of me, and I believe the church, then I would be a screwed up person. If I denied that part of me, the fact that I love women, and that I'm a lesbian, if I denied that and I molded myself to what the church wanted me to be, which was this heterosexual, marry a man sort of thing, I just couldn't go there. I would probably be divorced 3 times over. So yeah, not going to go there. All I'm saying, guys, is when we look back in our story, we have to look at the parts of that story and go, where are the learning curves? Where are where's the parts that I can look at and teach myself? What can I heal myself from? And why am I putting all of this out here? Why am I talking about this? Is it a huge story? Is it a huge lesson? Is it a huge teaching? No, there's so many out there that have connected with me in various different ways, but don't know who I am. I get asked, what's your story? How did you come to be channeling? When did you first connect with energy? How do you write the books that you write? Blah, 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 blah. And so I thought, well, how am I going to answer this in a way that makes sense? So this is my book. This is my story. And I'm giving you bite-sized pieces over the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to obviously expand it and expand it and expand it. And you can give me subjects that you want to talk about. But let me get my story out. I want you to see Louise. You see, I want you to see the girl who was born in Rhodesia, who lived through Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, who lived in Zimbabwe and then left Zimbabwe to go to New Zealand and live in New Zealand, and then left New Zealand to come live in Australia. There's a whole lot of stuff here. There's a lot of circles that were reconnected, circles that were healed. There's a lot of stuff that's been happening in my life. And when I look back and I see that healing, I go, wow, this is exciting. So I want you to come back with me. I want you to come back next week, and hopefully next week I won't mess up the sound like I did today. So I'm really, really sorry about that. And I hope you've enjoyed today. I'd love to hear your comments. Please comment down. You can tell me if I was boring. I hope I wasn't. You can tell me how you did or didn't enjoy it, what stood out for you, what didn't stand out, just talk to me, because this is you getting to know me. This is me getting to know you. And I will see you next week on the long walk out. So come on in. See you next week, guys.